Hey listeners, I found this article very beautifully written in the Hindu editorial by Nirupama Rao, who is a former foreign secretary and the author of The Fractured Himalaya. So the article goes like this: China, India and the conflict over Buddhism. As headlines trumpet Chinese naval expansion across the Indo-Pacific and India's strategic countermoves in this regard, there is a quieter, higher altitude contest already reshaping Asia's future. The real geopolitical frontier between India and China lies not in the ocean but in the Himalayas. And at its heart is not oil, trade, or weapons, but faith. What looks like a spiritual tradition rooted in non-violence and mysticism has become, in the 21st century, a geopolitical chessboard. Monasteries that once served as the center of meditation and monastic education now sit at the front lines of national power games. The reincarnation of lamas have become a matter not just of religion but also of sovereignty. And in regions such as Ladakh, Tawang and even remote Bhutan, Buddhist culture is increasingly shaped not only by the sacred but also by the strategy. China's campaign has escalated. Both India and China understand that the influence over Himalayan Buddhism is influence over identity. And in borderlands where lines on a map are fuzzy, identity is everything. For China, this means turning Buddhism into a tool of statecraft. Since 1950s, Beijing has worked to dominate Tibetan religious life. It exiled or marginalized independent lamas, co-opted institutions and most crucially claimed the sole right to approve reincarnation. In 2007, the Chinese government formally asserted that any living Buddha must be sanctioned by the state. The message was clear: spiritual legitimacy flows from political authority. This campaign has escalated in the recent years. China now maintains a database of officially recognized reincarnate lamas, monitors monastery activities across Tibet, and has launched an ambitious Buddhist diplomacy campaign across Himalayas. Sacred sites are being repurposed as instrument of soft power. Roads led to shrines built with Beijing's help. Conferences and invitations are extended to Himalayan monks who return home with subtle shifts in loyalty. Meanwhile, India has largely played catch-up, hosting Dalai Lama and Tibetan exile government since 1959 gave India moral clout but little strategic advantage. Until recently, only in the last decade has New Delhi begun to engage seriously with Buddhism as a tool of influence, promoting its heritage as a Buddha's birthplace and funding religion pilgrimage circuits. Yet these efforts remain fragmented when compared to China's centralized vision. As one scholar puts it, India practices Buddhist diplomacy, China practices Buddhist statecraft. Nowhere is the tension more visible than in the looming succession of 14th Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader who turned 90 in July has signaled that he intends to reincarnate outside Chinese territory, most likely in India. Beijing, predictably, has vowed to appoint its own Dalai Lama using the centuries-old golden urn method. The result will most certainly be two rival Dalai Lamas, one recognized by Tibetan exile community and much of global Buddhist diaspora, and one endorsed by Beijing and installed in Lhasa under heavy guard. This schism would not just split Tibetan Buddhism, it would force Buddhist communities across the Himalayan rim in Ladakh, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, Nepal and Bhutan to pick sides, and in doing so it could reshape the geopolitical allegiances of entire region. If spiritual figure the review sits in India, loyalty may deepen towards New Delhi. If he seated in the Lhasa with Chinese backing and resources, the gravitational pull could shift east. Already signs of tug of war are visible. In Arunachal Pradesh, China asserts its claim to Tawang, birthplace of 6th Dalai Lama, not only through military posturing but also through spurious cultural logic. It is Tibetan. Beijing summarily argues and therefore ours. In Nepal, Beijing has invested heavily in Buddhist infrastructure, especially around Lumbini, the Buddha's birthplace, and in Bhutan, China subtly courts monastic communities even as the kingdom maintains a tight control over religious affairs. What is striking is how even internal Buddhist disagreements are now strategic openings. The karma Kagyu school, one of the Tibetan Buddhism major lineages, has two rival Karampas, each claiming rightful leadership. China and India have found ways to align with different sides of split, transforming a spiritual dispute into a proxy conflict. Similarly, the contentious Dorje, ostracized by the Dalai Lama, has found unexpected empathy from Chinese authorities eager to weaken the exile hierarchy. The battle for Buddhism is not about dogma, it is about who gets to define legitimacy, and in doing so, the shape the loyalties of the border population. This is particularly relevant in places such as Ladakh, where Buddhist identity coexists with the deep nationalist pride that is Indian. India's challenge is to ensure that spiritual allegiance does not drift towards foreign control lineages, especially when those lineages sit across the line of actual control. It is tempted to dismiss all this as secondary religious pageantry in face of real politics. But that would be a mistake. In the Himalayas, where territory is often inaccessible and infrastructure scarce, soft power is hard power. A monastery that shifts allegiance is strategic lost. A high lama that pledges loyalty across the border can change the balance of influence in the valley or even a district. And the stakes are only rising. After the Dalai Lama's time, the question of succession will become a global issue. Countries with significant Buddhist population from Mongolia to Sri Lanka may be asked to take sides. The diplomatic fallout could be severe. For India, hosting the next Dalai Lama will be both an opportunity and a challenge, a chance to cement spiritual influence in the region, but also a trigger for intense Chinese pressure. The stage. In this unfolding story, Himalayans are not a backwater, they are the stage. The monasteries in the clouds, the chanting monks and adorned prayer wheels, they are not just relics of bygone age, but the instruments of power in a new one. This is where India and China are already competing, not with missiles, but with a spiritual succession crisis. And that is why, even as the world watches for signs of confrontation in the oceanic water of the Indo-Pacific, the real front may lie higher, among the clouds and the cliffs. In the realm where the spiritual becomes geopolitical, the next struggle between Asia's two giants could be well fought, not with submarines and aircraft carriers, but with Trengwas, prayer beads in Tibetan, and reincarnation. So this is very beautifully written by Madam Nirupama Rao, a former foreign secretary and the author of The Fractured Himalayas.